Also known as the Jim McCarthy Voiceovers World Headquarters Studio. This is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. This is episode 25 of the JMVO Weekly Primer. The JMVO Weekly Primer is about making your life better through marinating your mind in good stuff. My name is Jim McCarthy, owner, operator, and chief bottle washer at jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com. I believe that as business owners, entrepreneurs, and overall salespeople, we are bombarded by negativity every day, and it's the last thing we need. If you want to see your life and business change for the better, consume nurturing good stuff. Now, I'm going to pull this up here. I've got a guest on today who is quite the veteran in the voiceover industry. I would imagine in both voiceover, but also in the production sense, because he, according to his LinkedIn profile, and I'm going to bring him up here, is a straight-talking, no-nonsense, primary shot caller and relentless advocate and man of action for high-volume, turnkey TV, radio, commercial production enterprise catering to nationwide bank of clientele with a focus on Tier 3 automotive accounts, furniture retailers, casinos, live entertainment, and sporting events. And all the way at the bottom, it says, loyal and devoted employee, has never called out sick in over 25 years of his professional career. Mr. Corey Dissin. Welcome.
Hey now. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How you doing?
That was a hell of an introduction.
Thank you very much. And I've been intrigued by you. You and I think a lot alike, I would say. And from what I could see on LinkedIn, you kind of dole out a lot of no-nonsense, here's the reality of the situation type of advice. You, first and foremost, going over your history, it looks like you started out with Paul Turner.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
One of my longest and closest buddies, beyond getting me involved in the business. But yeah, I worked for him for a decade.
If anybody is well aware of the Howard Stern show, you've undoubtedly heard Mr. Paul Turner. If you're in the Hartford area and you've listened to WCCC, you've heard Paul Turner. You probably know Rich Conway, I would imagine. I
didn't know Rich. At the time we worked with Hartford, it was Ron Dresner.
Okay.
Was the PD. I'm dating myself a long time ago, but I have probably produced more WCCC liners than you can imagine over the years.
Yeah, the Rock, as Mr. Turner would say. So how did that all begin? You came out of college, and it looks like you interned for CBS Infinity Radio at some point.
Well, I was actually very fortunate, and I'll try to tell this as brief as I can. I started my career while I was still in college,
right?
And I had a classmate in one of my classes at Temple University, a guy by the name of Jim McClure, who happens to be a pretty important guy with Sirius XM radio now, but he was an Infinity guy for years. And he and I were both young bucks. And I recalled he was maybe bragging to a classmate that he was running the board or something at the all request show for WYSP radio. And I desperately wanted to be in radio. I thought I could be Howard and DeBella and all those awesome guys. And as soon as I heard him talking about YSP, I cozied up to him. And we fast became pals, and I said, look, I'll do anything to get involved at WYSP Radio. I will clean the bathroom with a toothbrush. I don't care. And he was kind enough to set up an informal interview with the Tim Sabian. Mm-hmm. And I was just a wet behind the ears, literally 19 years old. He brought me in and had me answer phones for public affairs programming on Sunday mornings at 5 a.m. Not exactly the sexiest of broadcasting gigs, but it gave me an opportunity to be in the building, meet the chief engineer, meet the head of sales, promotions, all the people there. So when it was time for me to get a real live formal internship, there was no interview. I just handed them the paper. They signed it. And, oh, yeah, it's Corey. He's the kid. Let's do his thing. And at YSP Radio, that's where I met Paul Turner. He was the production director there. Mm-hmm. He was the group production director for all the Infinity stations, including YSP and WJFK with Don and Mike and K-Rock in New York, et cetera, et cetera. And I told you I wanted to be on the air. Well, 2 weeks into my official internship, they fired the entire air staff. Now I have a real bad habit. I'm a big fan of stability, and I like to eat 3 times a day, and that scared the pants off me. So I figured, what's the next best thing other than being on the air? And that was production. And it just so happened that Paul was a baseball fan, as am I. I'm a baseball nerd. I mean, you'll see behind me, I have jerseys hanging up on the wall. Anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but this all means something. He took me under his wing and allowed me to be his kind of little mascot, taking packages out to FedEx, typing labels of reel-to-reels, cutting up tape. And then he would leave at the end of the day, 5, 6 o'clock, and basically hand me the keys to the studio. He said, teach yourself how to produce. And I did that for months. And he would critique my little crappy cassettes of liners and promos that I made. And he would say, well, you didn't do this right. Let me introduce you to compression, or et cetera. And that's how I learned. And then he started to pay me for being his producer. I produced all of his liners and imaging, and I was producing stuff for YSP radio. So, I mean, that kind of gets you to Paul Turner.
Yeah. And what a guy to learn under, because was he doing Howard stuff at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Was he?
Oh, it was unbelievable. He was doing Howard, and he was voicing all those lines, and I was producing up a lot of that stuff too, and did it, like I said, for about 10 years. And it was, talk about being spoiled to go from, most young kids come out of college, and they go to a small market and they bounce around. And here I am producing not just major market stuff in Philadelphia, but nationally syndicated things for Howard Stern. And then that turned into, because I was in Infinity, that turned into producing stuff for Don and Mike and for the Grease Man, et cetera. And all those shows. Yeah, there you go. Gobble the geek.
We had Don and Mike and Opie and Anthony. We had Howard out in Vegas when I was out there working for CBS. That was my first go-around, my only go-around with CBS, and I was Infinity at the time. But it's funny because it's amazing how your and my career paths kind of parallel, where I started at a very much smaller market radio station in Connecticut. And my first night on the air was literally my buddy coming through the production room door where I was cutting my teeth. And he says, hey, you want to be on the air? And I'm going, yeah, eventually I would like to. He's like, no, now. And that was my first night on the air. Being on the air wasn't really my thing. I reading liner cards and, hey, we got comedy at the cookhouse coming up. And it got boring to me after a while. I like the production room.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then that just turned into, producing up all these liners and promos. And he had a few commercial accounts at the same time, a nightclub here, a car dealer there. And in order to even justify paying me anymore, he said, look, you got to go get more business.
You're a sales guy.
I went from production guy to sales. So it was kind of by necessity that I had to learn how to literally pick up the phone and start dialing for dollars, and built up the business enough that we moved out of Infinity Broadcasting and purchased our own studios in Malvern, Pennsylvania, which is where we've been since 1996.
And he's still there.
No, see, that's the crazy part of the story. In 2003, he sold the company, the production company, and I went with the company. Mm-hmm. He really wanted to concentrate on his voiceover career. The company had been growing. We went from just me and him. There was like 4 or 5 employees now, and he had benefits and overhead and all this corporation blah, blah, blah stuff. And he says, Core, I just can't do it no more, man. I just want to voice stuff. That's what I enjoy doing. So enter a guy by the name of Chris Kraft, who was a real stud account executive at Infinity Broadcasting, who we were all buddies. And he later moved on to Fox Television and sold inventory there. And he was involved with the Skycam with Garrett Brown. And he always, used to joke around with Paul. He said, hey, man, if you ever sell that company, I want to buy it. And sure enough, in 2003, he did. And it just, the hockey stick kind of happened from there. And we added video production into audio, from audio. And then we phased out the imaging to concentrate more on commercials. And that's when things really blew up.
And that's when it became Propulsion Media Labs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're the owner of that currently?
I am not the owner. I'm the vice president and the general manager. Chris is the owner.
I gotcha.
And, he gives me a lot of autonomy to run the company, but he still obviously has, veto power over big decisions. And he's involved in things like hiring and firing and payroll and all the, fancy stuff. But most of the day-to-day operation, I got my paws in it somehow, some way. And
you started building that up. How did it start beginning to hockey stick at that point? What did you guys do?
Well, I mean, we spent a lot of time. We concentrated a lot of efforts on sales. We brought on at that time, and when he bought the business, that's his strong point. So we brought on 3 or 4 sellers, and we started to just make connections, and we just started knocking on doors and calling agencies and being a real nudge, quite honestly. And we picked up business, some of which we weren't even 100% sure we knew what we were doing, but we knew we can get somebody on the phone, and we were passionate, and we would work hard. And we still have some of those accounts today.
Hey, you just figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. I mean, fake it till you make it.
I mean, but you have the equity and the wherewithal to. It wasn't really faking it. You just had to figure out.
I'm oversimplifying.
Yeah, but I mean, with the video production, I got into video production around 06, 07 with Jack FM and Mix 92.9 in Nashville, and it was just a natural fit for us audio guys. Oddly enough, to go to video. I don't know why.
Well, we're fortunate in that we were able to bring on, we have a really strong internship program, and that was something that, because of the way I came through the ranks at Infinity and how I ended up with Paul, I felt it very important to pay it forward and start our own internship program, which I did in '98, and very tied into a lot of the local colleges, and that was like our farm team.
Nope, we lost him. Well, hopefully he's going to
the Art Institute. We were able to get kids from like the Art Institute and from Temple University and some of the local electronic media majors, Westchester, Kutztown, and these folks who stayed on after their internships, they turned into full-time employees, and they're still with us too, and they're producing up awesome video for us. We couldn't live without them. They do a great job.
How big is the company today?
We have 13 full-time employees.
Right on.
And we have our own brick and mortar facility. It's around 4,500 square feet with a green screen room. And, there's 7 of those folks are producers. I have an account management team as well as an office manager. And then there's Chris and myself as well. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cool story. And I fired myself as an audio producer when Chris bought the company to concentrate more on the management and new business development and kind of being the chief cheerleader and promotions marketing guy to get the word out. And, we're still kicking.
Well, and this is kind of harkens back to the last episode that I had with Coach Bill Maddox. We talked about the sexiness of being an entrepreneur in this day and age and how it's the hot thing to do. But sometimes you have to sweep the floors, show up at midnight, do all the things that aren't so sexy. So sometimes, it's nice to be able to have that skill set to go and, the person who's actually doing a lot of the grunt work, what it's like to be there. Hey,
oh yeah,
yeah,
oh yeah,
they come crying to you, and
it's not beneath me to grab a bag of trash or to push a mop or to help clean up or move furniture. I mean, I've done and do all of those things to keep the ship running.
Yeah. And even pick up some imaging production here and there, I would imagine. You got to go back.
You know what? Like I said, the imaging, we don't do that anymore. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really strictly the commercial work, the 30-second cable spot, the 15 pre-roll, a lot of radio commercials. The thing that's been growing more and more is like the web video, social media video, the 6-second spots. Those things are really starting to get some traction with us.
Now, you started pivoting and becoming kind of a truth sayer on LinkedIn, and you got a lot of engagement there. When did you begin? What inspired you to start heading in that direction?
Well, because I've been selling and promoting this company for so long, I've had the policy, and I preach it to my employees, that if you want the company to be better, if you want to be better, you don't point the finger, you point at yourself, you look in the mirror and you say, what can I do better to make, am I totally contributing what I can to make us grow, to make us better? And I've made the cold calls. I've been to the networking meetings. I went to the trade shows. We've placed ads. We've done all different types of ways to generate business. And I kept seeing this thing called content marketing. Mm-hmm. I started to really examine LinkedIn, and for whatever reason, LinkedIn just hooked me. I drink the LinkedIn Kool-Aid. I love it. And I just wanted to figure out a way to really maximize that. And on a whim, I started to see these videos of people talking into their iPhones and giving it free advice. And everything I would read and everything I would hear is that, hey, that's the new marketing now is you contribute some free advice and then you build a tribe from there. So I just got the stones one day to fire my phone up. And the first video or two I did were just abominable. But I did them just to start doing it. And everything else kind of evolved from there. The whole go get it and the attitude and the sunglasses. All that stuff just kind of happened. I didn't wake up one day and the way the persona is now, it didn't start that way.
Right. That's got to be generated from somewhere. And a lot of what you're doing is similar to like a Vaynerchuk and what Cardone does, if you're familiar with those guys.
Yeah, those guys are like, if they're in the Hall of Fame, I'm barely in Little League compared to them. I mean, they are legendary in what they do. I mean, I strive to be, half as good and successful as they have been. They really have it nailed down. And I'm learning every day, trying to get better at it. And I know the good news is I still have a long way to go. So it keeps me motivated and keeps me hustling.
How many voiceover people hit you up on a weekly basis? Hey, can I get on your roster?
It's constant. Yeah, it's constant. And look, I invite a lot of it because I am on LinkedIn and professing to be a voice talent authority. And I get that. But the good news is I haven't burned any new bridges. People have been reaching out to me and I'm making contacts and listening. And because you never know. I mean, our particular voiceover bank is a little different in that, look, 20 years ago when it was very few companies were featuring voices online, it was a race to see who had the most. And, obviously we know who the two big websites out there that have thousands, 20,000, 100,000 voice talent. So we kind of saw the writing on the wall with that. And we said, well, let's just kind of really, condense it down, because we had like 300-400 that we were booking folks for at one point, and it's a lot to manage. And we said, let's just work on the 100 that were, we can say are the most dependable, that really do a good job by our clients, that, great fast turnaround. They have a unique sound that we can market. They fit a particular niche. And we discovered who those folks were. And there's been very little turnover over the years since we made that shift. But it also gives us that cap to say, hey, look, there's a line. If you want in, I got to wait until there's a reason for someone to go out. Right.
Is there an exception for 101?
Is his name Jim?
He's this wonderful organization back here. That 20.
Well, we're
years.
certainly moving in the right direction. Certainly moving in the right direction.
Right. I have to ask. I'm a salesman, so yeah. I have to ask.
I respect that. And respect.
Getting onto the voiceover industry, it's funny you mentioned the two sites that we talked about. They upset the industry quite a bit.
Oh, just a wee bit.
Just a little bit, and I was actually on another podcast this morning with Mr. Earl Hall, and he gets quite a bit of flack for what he does because, he discovered a niche that, hey, I can teach a lot of the people onboarding into this business and, do his thing, and he created value. He's got a tribe and exactly what you're talking about. But man, he ruffles the feathers of some of these legacy guys out there, and it's just
because he's on Fiverr and stuff too. I think.
And it's I never understood that with these people that just get out. They're upset. They're just freaking upset. And the funny thing is, the people who make the most noise about it, who are like the ones that will, just completely shut down and call you a bottom feeder and yada yada yada, are the ones that when you say, well, hey, if you apply a basic sales process and do this thing, no, you stop there. No, I'm just fine. All right.
Of course.
I'm going to be complaining about the industry and what's going on with the degradation and the race to the bottom. But let's tell you, I am just fine. All right. And it boggles my mind with these people.
Well, I try not to get too caught up in that. I mean, there is an oxymoron that is circulating in the voiceover industry of the two words non-union standard.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. If you want a standard, go join SAG or AFTRA.
Mm-hmm.
Non-union standard, look, if you can get $100 or 20 times that, or if you feel like you only want to charge $50, that's on you.
Yeah.
And I can't spend my time worrying about who's to the left or the right. I just worry about what's in front of me.
Yeah.
And you can't get caught up in the rates. If you're a voice talent and you can get $500 for a local spot in a small market, and someone's willing to pay you that, you have a tip of the cap from me. If you're willing to do that exact same work for a tenth of that, I got no problem with you. Go earn a living. It's air over your teeth. Go have a good time.
Yeah, you're
It's
the
fun.
agency, and you know what the budgets are, and you bring it to your guys, and you say, well, if it's a smaller budget, I mean, have you ever had somebody come around and say, yeah, I'm I don't crack my mic for less than $350?
Sure.
That kind of stuff.
Sure. And we thank goodness we have a pretty rigorous vetting process going in to try to avoid that, because the last thing we want is to be put in an awkward position with a client that we have maybe for a long time that has a fixed budget. But what Talent X doesn't know is that particular client of ours is giving us 25 spots a month, and we're receiving a tremendous amount of volume, and they're benefiting by the economy of scale. But that economy of scale doesn't necessarily get centralized to one voice talent. It gets spread amongst our group. My point is that if a talent were to do that, if we're entering a relationship and they're working, and then all of a sudden 6 months later they change their mind and they say, well, I really charge this now. Yeah, that creates a little conflict.
Well, it's a lot of people, one of the memes I saw recently was like the juxtaposition between two movies. It was like Clint Eastwood and I guess some other movie iconic character. And one on top of it, it said, when the client asks what your rates are, and on the bottom is when you ask what your budget is. And it was like that, those two kind of they butt heads. And
sure.
And I understand that because I teach that. I say, find out what their budget is first. And it's a basic tenet of sales. And if you can't find out what their budget is, they don't know, they don't understand, or they don't understand what the rate should be, then that's where education comes into it, where you put a value proposition together for the sales process. And a lot of people typically, this one guy just came out of the gate and started flaming the original poster in the comments. Well, just tell them your rate and that should be good enough. No, sometimes it's not good enough.
Hey, if you have the strength and the depth of a client base that you're able to walk away from a job, if you don't want to quote unquote come off rate, I mean, look, that's okay. But where I draw the line is don't throw a stone at somebody else if they want to bend over backwards or negotiate or whatever. That's on them. Everyone's value is different to themselves, and their overhead is different, and it really doesn't hurt the $500 guy when another guy charges $50, as much as they want to think it does, because people will always drive a Mercedes-Benz, right? And people will still buy a Kia.
Oh, exactly.
It's okay, and if you're good enough, if you're tough enough to charge those rates, or get those, if you're able to charge those rates from a client over and over again, go for it. Yeah. I think it's great, but don't, like you were saying, these folks that spend their time being critical of folks that charge less than they do, they don't know the whole story why they might be charging less. They only see that number. There's a million reasons why someone charges what they charge on either end of the spectrum. Just mind your business, and if someone wants to hire you, they'll hire you.
Exactly, and I'm of the mindset that if you can put something out there in terms of a good value proposition and understand that, don't turn away anything. Don't say no to anything until you have a conversation that they get an idea. I mean, I'm a big proponent of every client that comes in, even if they're lowballing you, is a brick of gold, because we're not going to be in a cushy economy for long. Okay, it's going to adjust. And if we have if we're not in stack and rack accumulation mode right now, whether it's money or clientele, that clientele, if they're hamburger clients, if they're not going to actually, if you're going to continue pushing them away, they may be the ones that get you through that storm. Okay, and that's what I
can tell you right now, they will.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2008, when the economy took a dump, we were fortunate. Like I said, we employed 13 people. We didn't lay anybody off. That's because we had this nice pool of clients, and we added a few hamburger clients at the time to make ends meet. I mean, and also folks don't understand what remarketing value is with a client.
Absolutely.
So you may get a half or 75% of what you're used to getting for a particular job, but if you could take that job and show it to another client and either get the same or more money, well, that particular work that has remarketing value, you just made money off of that job, not necessarily from the same customer. And we're big fans of that. I mean, I built a national business out of it.
Mm-hmm. And it's I call it the 5 points of equity for a lowball client. It's like, right. Typically, thankfully for guys like me, most creatives and voiceover kick out the client on that first contact because they're lowballing them. And I'm like, well, you got to realize there are about 5 equity points of a lowball client, which is, you get to exercise you can try and upsell them, okay, and exercise your sales muscle. You get the ability to get in front of them if you get hired to show how it is to work with you. That's an equity point, and typically the person you're talking to doesn't want to stay where they are. They want to move up. And obviously, if they're going to move up, you want them to bring them with them. And all these different things that people don't realize, which blows my mind. Plus the fact this industry, thanks to technology, is changing. I think there's 10 million people that identify themselves as voiceover talent in the country.
Yep.
About that number.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I was going to make a point there. I hear a lot of talent that complain about what someone might charge or doing a job for less than their normal rate. But how many times are they auditioning for free and not getting anything?
Right.
So maybe you could even justify like their paid auditions. Mm-hmm. That, hey, if you're going to cut, some of these folks on these pay-to-play websites are doing 20, 30 auditions a day or a week, and they might not be getting much return on their investment for that. But if you could get 5 less than stellar paid gigs out of that, wouldn't it be more worth it? You're spending less time, making more money, and you're building a bank of business, which you can remarket and turn into more business. That's just the way my brain works. I mean, I kind of have the sales head. I've developed that. I didn't get into it, like I said, being a seller, but that's kind of where I gravitated towards. And it's all, you got to be able to cultivate the relationship too.
The relationship's the biggest key, because a lot of people don't, bringing to the 5th point of equity is referrals and references. At the end of the project, should you sell it and you've actually, you've got the middle ground from where they were to where you needed to be, and maybe you met somewhere in the middle and you were flexible and you were able to show them how it is to work with you, and they fell in love with you and they brought them with you. Now you can come back and say, hey, was this a value to you? Oh, man, absolutely. Great. Who else do you know? Who else do I need to be helping?
Or this business is so small that, and we've seen this happen time and time again on an exponential level. Client X who works for agency Y, you develop that relationship with them, you cultivate it, you're developing consistent billing, and then they leave for whatever the reason. They, were let go, they moved on, they got hired at another agency. Then all of a sudden you have agency Y and agency Z, because you still have relationships at the existing place, right. And now you have both of them billing, and that happens over and over and over again. It's like the Bill Walsh coaching tree, or like in football,
being brought into a whole new world if you played your cards right.
Exactly.
I had a guy, one of these guys who hockey sticked early. And I had a client up in Connecticut who wanted his voice, and we did demos and everything. And I came back and I said, well, it's going to be anywhere from here to here in terms of rate. And he started just bitching about it right away. And I was, we were going over text, and I said, look, I understand. I treated it like an objection. I understand. I get it. I used to think the same way you do. But if you're only working 5 to 10 minutes and you're making this kind of money, what's the issue? Okay.
Yeah.
I believe attorneys would love to make this kind of rate of money if you really pan it out.
Of course. Yeah.
Doctors. Okay. And he's like, well, what market is it in? What's the usage? I'm like, oh, dude, Jesus. You're getting in the weeds on this. This is what it is. This is what they're willing to pay. I could probably bump them up to this. Are you in or are you out? Oh, I don't think I could do that. I just, okay. I'm going to remember that, and I'm never coming back to you.
Of course. Why should you?
No.
Because there's 50 other talent that sound just like that.
Right. You're not a snowflake. I'm sorry.
No.
There's millions.
That's nothing personal to because I could tell you we have awesome relationships with the talent that we use. But they also know that, just like you said, it kind of is what it is. Yeah. I mean, not every job we do is going to be, this really sexy, $2,500 billing with residuals. It just doesn't happen that way.
And, they still do happen that way, but
sure.
There's, like you said, there's the Mercedes-Benz, the Alfa Romeo, the Lamborghini, and there's room. There's going to be room for everybody, but you got to start thinking innovatively. You got to start thinking outside the box. How many times do I get the question, how do I break into this business? I say, well, first of all, you start reading stuff and recording yourself and listening back to start getting better. I had the personal benefit of, 20 or 14 years of radio, being in the production department, reading stuff every day and listening back. I built all my own demos. And, it's funny, only real pros have their demos. Oh, shut up. You just get over yourselves, for God's sake. My God. I ended up just, I done all my own demos up until recently. I finally hired somebody to do it for me. Just hey, I'm doing well. Why not? Have somebody else get a second pair of ears, do that kind of thing. And it worked out wonderfully. But up until then, I did just fine with my own. And they were all real stuff that aired. And it represented my range and everything. So for somebody onboarding into the voiceover industry, takeaways, what should they start thinking about in your opinion?
Well, you had talked about your 5 points.
Yeah.
It was like budgeting, I guess. The
5 equity points of a lowball client.
5 equity points. So what I talk about is the voiceover dream. And what I mean is it's DREAM. If you're going to enter into the voiceover business, you got to learn how to spell DREAM. D is your demo. You got to have the demo buttoned up. R, you got to have any more. You have to have a home recording studio. And if you don't have one, the days of, like Don LaFontaine jumping in his limousine and being chauffeured around from studio to studio, not everybody gets to enjoy that unless you're in New York or Los Angeles and you're very famous. E is your education and training, which you mentioned. Read, be exposed to content, learn, go hire a coach. I mean, there's tons of videos out there from all sorts of professionals that give all kind of free tips on the performance, even the voiceover business. Mm-hmm. You got to be accessible. I don't know how many times people say, hey, I want to be a voice talent, but I work from 9 to 7 Monday through Saturday. Well, fat chance you're going to get any voiceover jobs. And then M is what I say is the most important. M stands for marketing. You can be one of the best creatives out there. You can have great pipes. You could, read like a Shakespearean actor. But if you can't sell yourself over and over and over again, and if you're not willing to commit hour upon hour to market yourself every day, you're going to have a tough time in this business because there is so much competition. I mean, I can tell you, and I've been doing this for 25 plus years, and I have hundreds of clients every month. 600-700 jobs come through our studios. I start my day every day marketing. I market me, I market the company, and that's everything from social media to emails to phone calls to personal appearances If you're not willing to get out there and knock on doors and pound the pavement, all you're going to have is a pretty demo and say, well, I kind of do voice work here and there. That's the dream.
And a lot of people just still depend on agents and things of that nature. And on Earl's show, I actually said agent is no more than a salesperson for you that has connections, that goes out and, getting connected with the agencies is never a bad thing, but you still need to understand how to sell yourself and prospect. And prospecting is kind of a foreign word in the creative circles because a lot of people just wanted to come and be dropped off at their doorstep.
Or they think that their widget is so pretty and so shiny and so magnetic that everyone will line up to buy it. And I've made it clear that even though it is a craft, even though it is an artisanship to be able to do voiceover well, it's not just the craft, it's the commerce. Mm-hmm. It's about buying and selling and buying. Those are the people that are successful. I know voice talent that some folks would say, well, his voice isn't really unique. He's just kind of an everyday kind of guy. He's not a big announcer or doesn't have, he's not Sam Elliott or whatever it is. But that guy knows how to pick up the phone. He knows how to create a compelling relationship. People trust him. People want to spend with him. There are folks out there that are making a ton of coin because they're great at marketing. Yeah. And then there are other talent that, that talent, and this another talent might be, like I said, this wonderful, amazing, unique, great sounding talent, but doesn't know how to communicate well or market themselves well. And then they wonder why aren't I making any money in this business?
And it's funny because I see from a video perspective, I've had some conversations around my market here because I do a little bit of video as well. One guy who is a technician, meaning that he will look at some of the stuff that I've done and say, well, you could have done this and this and this. I'm like, yeah, I get that. But you know what? I wanted to shoot this in 45 minutes, get it back, put it all together, and have my time to income ratio really good. Okay. If I can produce this in 4 to 5 hours and make the kind of rate I'm making, I'm awesome. And the client doesn't seem to mind. Right. There are people that actually, and these are, they overthink the technique of it from a video standpoint, or visual creatives and voiceover. However they do it, they get in their own way. And even this particular person I was talking to, he's like, "Well, I just went ahead and did a free demo of." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, really?" And I can see from the voiceover legacy guy, why did you do that for free? I don't think anybody needs to be doing anything for free. There's value to everything. And for some reason in the video space, there are guys around that, especially in Nashville, that just undersell themselves. And I can understand why they're doing it. But as soon as you kind of put it in front of them, say, look, you don't need to. Okay. Here's how to sell that. Here's it. Not that I don't get upset that they're driving it to the bottom because I know I can sell myself. And that's what it ultimately comes down to, is the confidence in knowing you can sell with confidence what you offer. And a lot of people just kind of lose it at that point because they don't consider them to be salespeople.
And you mentioned video production. Mm-hmm. The sale of that service is very similar to voiceovers in that market too has become very diluted because the barrier of entry is very low now. There you go. iPhones, laptops, low cost recording account, DSLRs, whatever it is. And we, like I said, I run a production company too. I happen to have a fluency in voiceover talent, but we're also booking shoots and edits and After Effects and all that stuff too. So we have to compete against the one-man bands that, charge a fraction of what we do. So I see it on both ends. It's very similar, very parallel.
Well, how do you guys combat that guy? It's your offerings are so you are the Ferrari, Lamborghini versus their, Chevrolet, if you will.
Well, this may sound counterintuitive, and this is a specific instruction to my staff as well as something that I implement. I never tell anybody we have great production. You're going to really love the way it looks and sounds. It looks cool. It's well done. Of course it is. Our unique selling position is our service and our speed. We work very quickly. We work well under pressure. We're used to high volume, quick turnaround times. And the guy that is one person who is shooting and editing and cleaning up and writing your script and maybe sometimes even voicing it. We're departmentalized. We have systems and processes in place. And that client, if they don't choose us, they don't have the benefit of dealing with my account coordinating team, they're these awesome concierges of production that take the script order or the spot order and take it all, liaison it all the way through the process and back to trafficking the final spot. No one else does it like we do. That's how I present it.
Right.
That's how it's as opposed to the person who does it all by themselves. And even if it's a 1 or a 2-man shop, I'll say, well, can your team do 20 spots in a day? I'm talking 20, 30-second video commercials in a day. Very few places can boast that.
Right. Makes sense.
I'm not saying we're the only one, but that's definitely a selling point for us, is that we can work quickly, even if it's, next day turnaround, blah, blah, blah. I feel like I'm trying to sell you. You want to buy a commercial?
Hey, you know what? I'll kind of put it back on its head and to say, that's the value proposition I put to people with the voiceovers. That, when you hire me, you're getting, you're getting, 20 years of experience, and I give you 5 to 8 takes and retakes if you need them, different styles, and my center maybe a little bit off center, and you just kind of get all that value involved. Thomas, I want to say, hopefully I'm not botching his last name, Machin. How many jobs are not being done because it's too expensive? Which I'm not sure if I understand that question. How many jobs are being done because it's too expensive?
So meaning it's too expensive what we charge, or it's too expensive? I guess it is a little confusing, Thomas. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Maybe I think because from the voiceover standpoint, how many jobs are not getting done because the voiceover talent are charging?
Maybe the client doesn't want to pay because they're too expensive. Maybe that's what he means.
Right.
Look, we get shot down all the time. It just happens. You're either sending in an RFP or you're sending in a quote or whatever it is. We get shot down all the time. You hope to, and usually that happens with a newer prospect. The clients that we have in place when if they bring us a new project, most of the time there is some type of template or rubber stamping that happens because it's a similar job. There might be some nuance where we have to, we got to bring in a drone to shoot this, or we got to have 4 voice talent instead of 1. Well, obviously that affects the cost. Most times we're not shot down unless it's someone who's never worked with us before.
And it's funny you bring up the RFP, request for proposal. That's literally the client coming at and just give me your rate.
Oh, sure. That's the fancy way to say it.
Yeah. It's tough to really combat that because unless you have a direct conversation with the client, okay, what is you're looking for here? How do we, trying them on and asking the right questions in terms of what their budget is and what they're thinking. And, because when you ask those questions and you get the budget out of the client, you're at least able to, in your head, say, okay, this is going to require 20 or 30 minutes of my time. If I do it this way, how much is that worth? And I can do that as long as I'm with those parameters, those time parameters. And so many creatives think of it as in usage or union and non-union, and is it per the GVAA rate? Look, those are good starting points, but at the end of the day, it's all about what you personally prefer, and if it makes sense for you.
Of course, you got to be able to pay the bills. Like I said, my decision making is not about my ego anymore because it's not just me. My decisions affect salaries and benefits and mortgages and car payments and health benefits. And, I have to keep the funnel full for a lot of people. So, I take all that into account as I'm, agreeing or not agreeing to certain budgets on certain projects.
On the receiving end of the voiceover inbound demo, I guess you could say, you're constantly getting them. What are some of the best techniques you've ever seen that have gotten your attention?
Well, I'm going to give you 2 different answers for that question. One is what I would tell everyone when they format their demo to keep it short. Your most electric recording should be in your first 10 seconds, because if not, I'm going to turn it off and throw it in the trash can. But specifically, there is a voice talent who works for us now, and this wasn't her pitch to get my attention, but it was something to keep my attention. And I think it's one of the most brilliant, maybe it's just me, one of the most brilliant techniques is what she did is she sent me an email. She said, what your voiceover audio looks like. Mm-hmm. I was like, wait, what do you do? What does that mean? And when I clicked open the file, all she did is in Pro Tools or Audacity, whatever it was, she sent me the waveform of her reading my name. And I just thought it made me open the email. It made me say, what the heck is that? And when I listened to it, I said, that is brilliant. And those are the type of things, because you get so many folks that say, please listen to my demo. Do you have any openings on your roster? 24-hour turnaround, Source Connect, IPDT, blah. It's the same nonsense. This was something different, and I really respected that.
Very good. What was the worst?
I've had – you hear demos that are recorded.
We got this email from this guy, Jim McCarthy.
Nah, man. Dude, you're easy compared to some, trust me. But it's getting the phone call. There's another guy who'll remain nameless, but I know he's got his normal voice and he's got his voice when he talks to me on the phone. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hello, Corey, how are you? And he's really being trailer guy. And I'm like, no human being speaks that way. Trust me. Even Paul Turner, who has balls the size of basketballs, doesn't sound that way. It's his normal voice. Anyway, I'm digressing, but that's kind of uncomfortable when you get that call from the guy who's kind of faking it and putting it on too much. Or the one who wears out their welcome when you've said, hey, look, I just don't have a spot for you. Thank you. But then it's just continue to call like my mind's going to change. We let them know our parameters. They refuse. They say, well, I'm not working that way, blah, blah, blah. And then 6 months later, I get that automatic email that says, hey, have you listened to my demo? I'd like to go on your roster. So I keep my emails from that and I forward back to that person. Here's what you said last time. Is that still the same policy? And they usually write me back and they say, oops, I forgot. Sorry. Yeah.
And even then, I mean, from the sales guy in me would figure a way to turn that around, to rectify that and make you a fan. I'm a fan of the nonlinear follow-up. Even if you tell me no, I mean, when I was in the car business, after 4 no's, I typically would get a yes, and that one instance of being in front of a customer, here I am on this podcast. I probably asked you for your business 3 times already. All right. And that's just the way I'm wired. I'm going to find other ways. I'm like my son who finds different angles to ask the same question. He's 10 years old. And he's like, well, what if I do this? Well, what if I get? Oh yeah, and it's providing value with each jab you take, and that's where a lot of people also miss the boat or miss the mark is the fact that you can't just keep coming back and saying, hey, do you have an opening? No, hey, here's something I recently have done. Maybe that will fit in your roster. Take a listen. Here's a quick 15-second snippet of it. Whatever, value-oriented follow-up is missing.
I can look on the flip side where I've said these stories of talent that have captured my attention and won me over, and we work with them and they continue to work with us. I can recall other talent who I shot down over and over and over again, and I'm kicking myself that I did that because now we work with this particular guy and we have for probably a decade, and he's awesome.
Yeah,
and he does a great job. And what was I thinking? So I have the unique position, I like to think, because I'm out there selling our production company and all of our voice talent, that I can be in the voice talent shoes. I know how they're selling themselves. I know how they feel. I know how it is to get hung up on, to be told no. So I try to let them down easy as best I can, but I never throw a demo away per se. I might file it, but I don't throw it out. Because when I have a lull, which doesn't happen often, I'll revisit that folder and I'll refresh my memory because, tastes change, needs change. And you never know when that one talent who did bug you 18 times and sent you 10 demos, when you might want to go back and listen to that. And I have a little bit of respect for that guy who's a nudge too, because I'm a pain in the neck myself.
You have to. You lived in that area, man.
Yeah, dude.
You got to respect it.
I mean, look, let me put it this way. I didn't close any sales because of my looks. You know,
You and me both.
I'm just a pain in the butt, and stayed in your grill and eventually got you on board. So I get it, and I'll even tell folks I respect your salesmanship.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely get it, and I like your passion. You just got to bear with me. Yeah, for whatever the reason.
Sometimes it just takes time, and just keep on keeping on. Keep me updated. You know. I mean, do you ever get like with some people that they break through that Broca's area of the brain and they penetrate they get your attention and you listen to it and it's god awful. Do you actually break it down for them then and say, listen, man, we got some work to do.
There's been instances where that's happened or you hear that demo that was professionally produced and might have taken 600 takes to get right. And you're only hearing, 7 or 8 snippets out of that 7-hour session, and they were able to hodgepodge and quilt together this pretty nice sounding demo. But then when the spotlight is on and the mic is live and the client's on the other end, you just did wide-eyed. I saw you do that.
Yeah.
And that happens, something happens in the bed. We'll leave it like that. Then, then you figure out, oh, geez, this wasn't what you were cracked up to be. And you've had to, part ways in that sense too.
Yeah, I've been in that situation, not as recent, but it was actually they had me reaching outside the realm of my possibilities. Not that there was anything on the demo that I misrepresented, but it was, wait, you want me to do what? I'll give it my best shot. I mean, okay, it was one of those situations and they seemed to like it, but Thomas coming back, he says, so persistence is the secret. I would qualify that by saying strategic persistence is the secret. Nonlinear follow-up, meaning every time you follow up with somebody, you're giving them a jab. You're jabbing and with value. If every follow-up is a right hook, to quote Gary Vee in his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, it's not give, and take. It's give, and ask, So if everything that you do is constantly asking, it's not the right kind of persistence that you want, and you're going to be – it goes beyond being a nudge, and you're kind of just annoying at that point, I would say.
And another way to visualize that, Thomas, I'll give you that to think about, is if your sales process is a blank page – and every email or social media contact or phone message is a dot, sometimes the dots aren't always right next to each other. They're in various portions of the paper, but eventually those dots will start connecting and eventually they'll make a line. Don't give up on making dots, even though boy, that making a line is going to take a while. Yeah. I'm far off from doing that. And I do that every day. I mean, every day I'm sending out some emails, some LinkedIn messages, leaving some voicemails, and some of it I know I am nowhere near closing a sale that day. It's not happening. And that's not because I have a lack of confidence. Believe me. It's just that I know that's part of the waltz. Here's another message for me. Here's your favorite pleasant pain in the butt, Corey, calling you. I'm going to check in with you in 2 weeks. I'm not going away. And Thomas, here's another tip. I've even said to folks in writing or on the phone, I'm not going away until you tell me to go away. If they tell me to go away,
almost like
and then I go away. Yeah, it's like, because I'm that passionate in what we do that I believe if you don't have it, you're doing a disservice to yourself.
Yeah.
If there's a client that I want out there, I'll push until it's made clear that Core don't push anymore. We're done, and that's okay. I can live with that. Some folks can't deal with that rejection.
Yeah, and it's just, and even when they tell you that, you come back at them a month or two later and say, I'm still here. It's like whack-a-mole.
I've got clients right now spending literally in the last 2 weeks that I've nudged for years. Mm-hmm. And just by a set of weird circumstances, they just kind of fell in our laps, pennies from heaven. Thank goodness. And, that we were top enough of mind to them for us to give us a call when their existing relationship parted ways, whatever.
So going back to the whole sales thing, how did you start really learning about the whole sales process? What was your experience? I mean, other than trial and error, who influenced that?
Well, I mean, A lot of it was intuitive. I mean, maybe genetic. My father, could sell ice to an Eskimo, as they would say. He was very good at that. And, but Chris Kraft, the owner, his background was in sales, and he took a lot of my intuition and my instincts, and he was able to channel it and say, well, here's more of a process for you. And he helped me learn it in that respect. But, most of it, a lot of it is just intuition and instinct. I mean, I'd like to think, thank goodness, I was born with it. I'm not the best seller out there, but I think, if you're confident and you believe and you know your product good enough, you'll get results out of it. And I didn't have any formal training.
I think a lot of people who excel in sales, I think everybody's in sales. I think everybody's born a salesperson. It's whether or not they realize it. Okay, the ones who do realize that they're in sales at any given moment. Because anything we do in life, it's sell or be sold. We're being sold on something or we're selling something. I talked in front of a group of kids one time about creative selling and stuff like that, and they weren't so big on being aligned with being salespeople. And I said, well, let me explain this one thing to you. I said, looks like you're all in high school. Yeah. I said, so you got prom coming up. Yeah. It's probably some of you want to take to prom. Mm-hmm. You have to ask them to prom, right? You got to sell them on going to prom with you. Okay. Yeah. Congratulations. You're a salesperson. The commission looks different. That's it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And if you understand that, it just makes all the more sense that every situation in life is selling. It's one of the biggest not tasks, but skills you can learn. One of the best skills you can learn.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that, because another thing that I just did this today, as a matter of fact, I spoke at a local high school with an entrepreneurship class, and I'll go and I'll speak to high schools and college classes, and I'll often ask them, the very cliche question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And this one wants to be in TV. This one wants to be a film director. This one wants to be a singer, some media-esque type job, whatever it is. And I'll say, guess what? No matter what position you ultimately get or land, you're all salespeople. And then I go on to give them a very similar explanation, whether you're selling yourself to an employer, and once you are employed, you're selling your ideas up the ladder. Or if you're in the creative business, you're selling your creativity to someone who's going to spend money with you. You may not be dressed in a suit and tie and carrying a briefcase and calling a lead list every day, but you're in sales no matter what field you're in.
Absolutely. Matt Monero in episode 20 talked about his employee that he had who wanted to do better within his company, and continuously he came on. He was making a certain amount of money. He wanted, and he basically gave himself 38% raises every year because he came to the table and said, here's my value proposition. Here's what I've done for you. Here's how it added to the company. Here's how it capitalized, and basically just kind of really capitalized from there. And, and Matt was like, look, you sold me. Great. We'll give you that 38 instead of a 3 to 6% raise, cost of living raise that is sold to us when we work for somebody. Yeah. He went and fought for a much bigger raise, and he said in 2 to 3 years the guy went from making $35 to well over $115,000 a year.
Wow, that's incredible.
Just by taking on more responsibility, making himself valuable to the company, and then being able to translate that into a value proposition and selling his boss and saying, here's why you need to pay me.
It's huge. It's money well spent.
Mm-hmm. Who are you listening to and marinating your mind in as of late? And we'll wrap up with that.
There's a guy online who I was fortunate enough to connect with. Didn't think he'd even take my call. His name's Steve Nudelberg, Nudleberg. And he's kind of like a sales guru, kind of subscribes to the same method of thinking as we do. And he's a really good content marketer out there. Jeff Gitomer is a sales guru. I was just listening to his podcast today. Obviously Vaynerchuk and Grant. I consume plenty of content from each of them. There's another guy who's in the auto business. His name's Frank Lopes.
I know Frank.
Yeah, Frank is he's a straight shooter, and he's a motivator, and he's someone that I've known for a long time. So I pay attention to what he's putting out there too.
There's actually another guy I'll recommend within the automotive industry, a great guy who's been coming up quite fast, Jonathan Dawson. He does something called Cellcology, which is an amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's all automotive based, but a lot of the concepts you can explore and put out into different industries and
There's
stuff.
also Keenan too, is on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Keenan. He's a stud. I like his energy.
Well, if you listen to Grant's podcast, then you hear my voice. Were you aware of that?
Oh, right. True.
Yeah,
There you go.
I mean, from and I'm not putting you on the spot here. You tell me if it makes no sense or anything, or you just hit me square between the eyes. Am I your company worthy? I mean, eventually.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
That's good to know.
And I'm not just saying that because I'm on live TV.
Good. I have to know.
No, that's fine. I will satisfy that curiosity, and that I would imagine you and I will have a further conversation about this soon enough.
Beautiful. When are you doing your own podcast? You thinking about it?
Man, I sure am. I got to learn from pros like you, man. I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out. And, it is something that is, it's something I'm going to be approaching very soon. I just want to do it. I want to put my own little special sauce on it.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I just have to have all the pieces together. I just want to do it the right way. I don't want to be on the air just to say I have a podcast. I want to make sure I do something right and have something to contribute that's worthy of listening to.
Yeah, and kind of my thing is just I believe in marinating your mind in positive, good stuff, and this is the basis of this podcast.
No doubt.
I produce the podcast Imaging, and I'm like, well, I should probably have a podcast. So whenever you get around to doing that, let me know. I'd love to help you out with it.
Thank you. I'll keep picking your brain because you seem to know what's going on with this stuff.
Oh, please. I love that. Corey, thanks for being on the JMVO Weekly Primer. We really do appreciate. How can people find and discover you?
Easiest way is go to CoreyDissin.com. All the contact information is on there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Or you can dial the fancy vanity number, 888-COREY-84.
That's it. I was wondering about that. I'm like, dude's got an 800 number. That's pretty cool. And it's your own personal number.
Like I said, I wanted to put my special sauce on the content marketing. Not everybody's doing that, so I figured, well, I'll buck up for that. Why not? It's kind of sexy, and it gives me a chance to let it roll off my tongue a little bit.
Great.
It has a nice ring to it.
Thank you for being on. Guys, if you're listening, please like, subscribe, comment on the show if you want. Reach out to Corey. Follow him on LinkedIn and all the different places that he pointed us to. It'll be in the description section. If you're a big fan of the podcast, I've actually put up a Facebook page that is specific to the podcast. It's the Weekly Primer, where you'll be able to find it and you'll see a picture of me like winking and pointing at you. And I've been putting all the episodes up there as well. Follow along, comment, contribute. If anything that kind of stood out in any of the episodes, let me know. I'm more than happy to certainly engage. Corey, once again from Propulsion Media Labs, thank you for being on with me on the JMVO Weekly Primer.
Hey, Jim, thank you. You're very generous with your time, and everybody should remember to go get it.
This is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com /podcast.